Welcome to Melt. I'm Suresh Venkat. We're coming to you today from the headquarters of tech giant Lenovo in India. The brand recently launched a high-decibel campaign to integrate all its consumer brands under one roof. To know more, we're in conversation with Chandrika Jain, Marketing Director at Lenovo India. What does it take to market a tech brand in India today? Are Gen Zs and millennials the key target audience? And what really is the role of experiential marketing for a tech brand? Let's find out as we get ready to melt with Lenovo's Chandrika Jain. Chandrika, welcome to Melt. Let's first start by defining who exactly the Lenovo consumer is. What kind of consumer profiling do you do?
Suresh, first of all, thank you for having me here. Consumer profiling is an extremely important aspect of what we do, but largely and broadly, we put them into what we call the B2B consumer and the B2C consumer. B2B, which is a little simpler to explain at least, we broadly classify them basis the size of the company, the designations they have within the company, the functions that they run within the company, and specifically the roles that they play while purchasing technology or infrastructure for their companies. And based on that, we create classifications and then we go to speak to them in a way that makes the most sense. On the B2C side, it's generally driven by segmentations that happen across the board, and Lenovo has a segmentation for ourselves as well. Broadly, it's between the age group of 16 to 44 that interests us the most, and we've put them in three broad categories, which is the elites, those with a slightly larger wallet size, the aspirers, those who want to buy technology that they aspire for or places they want to be in, and then the techies, the tech forward, those who will always be the first to go and try everything new in the market. So these three broad categories are of most interest to us, while we have other categories in the segmentation as well.
Okay. Elites, aspirers, techies. I'm going to talk about the B2C consumer for a minute.
Sure.
Would it be fair to say that all Indian consumers are value conscious?
I think yes. I'm an Indian. We are value conscious.
What does that exactly mean for a tech brand like Lenovo, this value consciousness?
I want to clarify first by saying what is value conscious, right? So, is the Indian consumer value conscious? Absolutely. But value in this context does not necessarily mean cheap. I think we're an extremely intelligent customer where value is about what you're able to get for a certain price point, the features that you're able to get, what the product is able to offer to you at a certain price point. The size of the wallet in itself might be large or small, but it's the value that you get at a price point is what drives the consumer, and not necessarily cheap, like I said. The Indian consumer also goes a step forward. What we've seen is that the Indian consumer is also very tech savvy. They understand technology a lot, so therefore driven by features and tech forward features like AI, like 5G, and is willing to pay for those features to be able to have technology that's enabling them.
And this is, in your view, unique to Indian consumers, this sort of tech forwardness and this tech savviness?
It's not unique to Indian consumers, but India is definitely out there in the fray, and we see that their ability to understand tech, invest in tech, to an extent even buy a lot more premium tech than we've seen in the past, is definitely true of the Indian audience.
So does that mean your advertising doesn't need to educate consumers that much anymore? You can just directly sell to them. You don't need to educate them on the technology? I wouldn't
go that far. But the fact that they have an appetite to buy things that have been advertised to them. You know, today you see companies go out there and speak to consumers about 5G, about AI, about OLED screens, about larger display, about Dolby Atmos. Like, we are talking tech that's really out there. But Indian consumers have the appetite to buy it and also have the inclination to understand it.
One of the popular societal cues that we see is people bragging about the technology that they buy. The most famous of those, of course, is Apple and the kind of lines you see outside Apple stores, because people like bragging rights. Would it be fair to say that building brand affinity is one of the key jobs in tech marketing?
You know, tech is an ever-evolving category, Suresh, and being able to build loyalty is a significant challenge here. So I can't hide from the challenge that we all have within the category. That said, while tech allows for what you call bragging rights, because of how fast evolving it is, it also gives us what we call as fleeting loyalty. So I can brag about the technology that I have today, but I might not necessarily... In
18 months' time, it's gone.
It's gone and it's not there, right? So I think what's becoming imperative for brands is to be able to establish consistent quality, exceptional service, and being able to engage with consumers in a way that is authentic, that is able to be able to bring what you call shared values to the table, so that we can build those connections in the long run. And that is what is going to stay and build brands and build loyalties over a period of time.
Chandrika, I imagine as a marketer, you're constantly monitoring consumer behavior.
Yeah.
And behavior around tech and gadgets can change very, very quickly, because when we introduce touch, a whole new range of gestures and behaviors sort of emerge from nowhere.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about the big trends and changes in consumer behavior that you observe from your vantage point.
You're right. I think we can't hide from observing our consumers. But here's the thing that, and I think I touched upon it a little earlier, the thing that we've noticed most in the last couple of years, something that developed during the pandemic and has been building since, is the ability of the Indian consumer to be able to buy premium technology.
Mm-hmm.
This means that we've also seen a trend where premium purchases are becoming a thing, much more than it was in the past. So people are willing to invest in technology that's higher priced if it is bringing a certain value or bringing certain future tech to them. And this is
quite
one of the
often
biggest...
willing to pay more money without seeing the product, buy it online, right? The
Exactly.
touch feel element is...
Yes, right. With
changed.
Omni-channel and everything else that's come in, there's no resistance to that. But we've seen that there's definitely that change to say, I'm willing to pay the money, but I want the future of technology within my products.
So that brings me to the next obvious question. What is your omni-channel strategy for customers like these?
It's one of my favorite topics, Suresh. I think because it was also one of the biggest challenges that Lenovo took on very, very early in the journey of omni-channel. We are over 500 store brand.
Okay.
And we have about 300 partners who own those 500 stores through franchisees and such. And all of this had to get connected to Lenovo.com. So you can imagine the network of people that we're talking about if we had to create an omni-channel approach where the consumer can buy wherever, whatever, and however, right? And again, to put it back in context, India was the first country as a pilot within the Lenovo network to establish omni-channel, and we started this conversation back in 2020. But it was far from an easy journey for us. 2020, when we started off and had the first conversation, 18 months later is when we actually got our first order. So it's a very strong approach for us. We've seen it grow leaps and bounds. 11,000 orders last year. We're looking at about 25,000 plus orders this year from the omni-channel network. And for us, the journey is still on, and we believe that it's the absolute right direction to go in.
Chandrika, continuing with the omni-channel question, one would assume that product demos, activations, all of these help in consideration to purchase to all of that. So do you have a separate strategy for experiential marketing or an activation strategy?
Absolutely. I think instances always play best, right? So I'll talk about Legion. So Legion is one of our leading gaming brands within the roster for Lenovo. And most recently, we've launched another brand within the family called Lock. What we did with Legion, now the confidence in the brand Legion for us comes from how successful the product is, and our customers agree. So we said, when we stepped back and said, what should be our way of establishing the presence of Legion? The answer was sort of staring us in the face, which is put the product in the hands of people, as they would say, right? So that's exactly what we did. So we did this in small and big ways. We took it to large events that are out there, which attract the kind of audience that we need. For example, Comic-Con, or recently where we were at an event called S8UL, which was a large gaming event that was organized, which saw about 13,000 people under one roof over 3 days, 3 million people watching the event online. And we took the product there, put it in the hands of people. People could touch it, feel it, play on it. No better way of proving your product, right? But we also did this in small ways, and this is built in usage patterns. So the college-going audience is one of our biggest audience for gaming devices, needless to say. And
I imagine,
yeah, you would imagine, right? So within colleges, they run what's called the LAN parties, which is where hostels come together and they play games on the LAN. We took that over and we made it the Legion LAN party, and we put products in the hands of people who want to experience it. Again, while it's a smaller initiative, we've been in about 7-8 colleges in the last 6 months, about 8,000 people who have actually experienced our product. And this sort of works for us brilliantly. And
globally, of course, the gaming industry is bigger than the film industry. Not many people know that. It's bigger than Hollywood.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So I imagine this is the tip of a pretty large iceberg for you in terms of a target
very
market.
large, right? So that's how we see it as well. So if you see our overall funnel, experiential marketing will not replace what we do at an awareness level. It's a very, very large audience for us to go after. And we do go after them through our traditional mediums. But it goes a long way in proving the ability of the product to actually put the product in the hands of people. impactful.
Okay, now that brings me to the next question. What is your traditional medium strategy? Traditional television, traditional print. What roles do these play for a tech brand like Lenovo?
Interesting, right? This is a dilemma most marketeers face, where at one end you're hearing that digital marketing is taking over the entire universe. So what should be the balance of TV and digital and print and such? But I'll start with TV. To answer your question simply, is TV impactful? Yes. But it is comparable to the reach of digital. And if I were to take that to lines of data, now we work with Dentsu, who is our media partner. And we've got this recently when we did a split of our audiences and we saw the data from a tool that Dentsu uses. We said we'll look at a split of 18 to 44-year-old male, female from SEC A and B. We realized that the reach is about 75% on TV, but it's an equal 75% on YouTube, just to put it in perspective. So is TV impactful? Yes. But is digital equally impactful? The answer is also yes. So for a category like ours, there's also a possibility for us to only have digital campaigns or have a combination of TV and digital campaign. Okay. And stretching that, right? You asked the question about print.
Yeah.
Now, traditionally, we've used a lot of print, Suresh, but for the last couple of years, Lenovo has been fairly inactive on print until last year. And we picked it up around what we call the back to school, back to college time, right? The May, June, July period is when we got active in print last year. And again, if I were to take it back to just purely the rational piece, only about 30% of our audience is reached through print. So if I were to put it in the stack ranking, print would stack low. But all that said, right, I think print can be used both ways. It can be used for brand and it also can be used for some amount of what you call tactical advertising. You can't miss large impactful pieces on print. It's there and it's there for you to see. And then nowadays you can also use it for a lot of tactical information giving sort of communication or comparison communication. And now you can also embed some technologies like QR codes and track what is happening in terms of response.
So some attribution is possible.
Some attribution is possible, not entirely, but you know, in a world where attribution is so important, some amount of attribution is possible. So I think, is print working for us? Yes, it's working for us. It's working for us in some markets more than other markets, and specifically in language markets. So I would think that it's a good mix to have, but not necessarily top of stack.
Now let's talk about advertising. A decade ago, you had Ranbir Kapoor as a brand ambassador for Lenovo. And today we don't see any celebrity endorsements for Lenovo, if I'm not wrong.
Right.
But you do use influencers.
Yes.
So has the strategy shifted away from celebrities towards influencers?
Yes and no. And the reason being, I think what you use or the tactics that you employ for any brand, Suresh, in my view, has to do with the evolution of where the brand is or the journey of the brand in that particular country. 10 years ago, Lenovo was in a place where we wanted to build on the existing awareness in Lenovo. We wanted to reach people. We wanted to draw associations. And that is easiest done through
Bollywood
celebrities.
Or cricket,
Bollywood or cricket, we know it. Cricket is religion and Bollywood is the thing that everybody attaches themselves to. So look at it as a shortcut means to be able to do that. Today, Lenovo, our recent brand tracker tells me we're at a 90% awareness for Lenovo. We're the second largest PC brand in the country. So awareness is not what I want to do, but I want to be able to drive, like I was saying, deeper engagement, deeper conversations with my audience. That is when influencers and content creators come into the picture. In my view, all of them work equally well, but it just depends on exactly what is your objective at the time.
So horses for courses kind of.
Horses for courses is exactly how I put it.
Now let's talk about Lenovo's strategy for engaging with content creators.
Yes.
What kind of engagements do you do with your content creators who in turn engage with audiences?
We are keen on the Gen Z. And the Gen Z is keen on the content. So there's no escaping content and it keeps us very busy because, you know, one has to really think about how do you build that content and how do you take it to an audience and how do you make it differentiated and why will your audience connect with that content, because there's a ton of content out there and we all know it. That said, I think I have a couple of examples of what Lenovo has been doing and that would be the best way to probably explain this. So we recently ran this program called The Brave New Art, and it was indeed the Brave New Art. So what we did is we bought 2 content creators or influencers as you'd call it, celebrities in their own right. So together from very different genres of work. So say one was a musician and the other was a dancer, for example. We brought them together and we asked them to create a masterpiece on our yoga. So each of them from different genres came together and created pieces of work, which was extremely popular because of not the one was it was differentiated, but it was also very, very authentic because people were jamming, coming up with ideas, getting to a point that created content that felt right for the audience. We put this on OTT and we got about 6 million people watching this. And each of them completed this for about 90-95% of the content was watched, right? That's brilliant, right? Like think about it in engagement terms. When we put it on social media, we got about 28 million views on this kind of content. So it goes to talk about how differentiated this content is. But we've done a lot more. We bought a bunch of YouTubers in a room, and then we bought a bunch of Lenovo tech experts in a room, and we created a masterclass for a product that the world had not seen. So we gave these YouTubers a peek view of a product that was going to launch. And it was not just a peek view, it was geek speak. For about 1.5 to 2 hours, where the YouTubers were allowed to ask us questions, get into the hows and the whys and the engineering and why the product is built a certain way and what makes it what it is. And that worked brilliantly because at the end of it, when the product actually launched, we got a ton of organic content from these YouTubers that actually delved into the specific details of these products, which our audiences were lapping up like there was no tomorrow. So organic in nature, yet exclusive because these YouTubers got to see it much before the world got to see it, right? So there was a purpose and need for the YouTuber and there was a purpose and need for the consumer.
Sneak peek for geeks.
Sneak peek for geeks.
Right? Now let's change track a little bit to business strategy. We've read reports that Lenovo is on a path of something called a service-led transformation from curating, installing, managing hardware to even moving to a subscription model.
Yes.
So are you saying in a few years' time I'd be subscribing to a Lenovo tablet or a computer and not buying one?
I wouldn't say a few years, I'd say now.
And I should do it now?
And I'm not even ahead of myself because, here I should start actually with some data as much as, it might seem a little overwhelming, but just think about it. Just in the last 11 months, what we've seen India as a market do within the small businesses and media business, there's a 65% increase in people picking up devices as a subscription model. The most recent study that we've seen from IDC, which is a CIO report that was released in 2023, says that the Indian awareness of using device as a service or infrastructure as a service model is 91%. We are far ahead of Korea and Japan, which are supposed to be tech advanced companies. So that's how aware our audiences are, right? But that's all the data. We've seen this happening in reality. So we have a product called TrueScale, which is about device as a service or infrastructure as a service. And we see a huge amount of interest within the Indian CIOs to be able to go for this model. Of course, the cost considerations of a model like this is very attractive, but it's not just the cost consideration. It's also the simplicity and the flexibility of a model like this that draws them to the table. So we have banks that are working with us currently. We have automobile multinationals that are working with us that are subscribing to some of these services that we offer them.
And does this change your marketing strategy from buying a product to buying a subscription?
Yes and no. No, because largely at an awareness level, we still have to go out and tell people Lenovo has a product like this and you can buy it. Like we are there in the market for you to buy. So at least approach us should you have the requirement. But after that point, it does change a little bit because what you have to establish in models like this is not just the availability, but you have to establish the value that one is able to drive by adopting such models, right? And that's slightly different. And that becomes hard in marketing terms. You can imagine that imagine producing a video for 30 minutes trying to explain to somebody what value a subscription model can.
In an era where attention span is 30 seconds.
Yeah. So how does a marketer do that, right? So you have to be slightly more innovative to say, how do I generate that interest? How do I establish that value quickly? So I'll give you an example of what we did. We created something called as a DAS calculator. So what the DAS calculator is a very simple tool where any CIO or an IT person can go and put a couple of values to be able to derive that should they move from a CAPEX model to an OPEX model, what could be the potential value for that scale up or that optimization. Now, once that is calculated, you've suddenly generated enough interest to have slightly longer conversations without using the typical ways of marketing. So yes, we will have to tweak our ways around to be able to quickly establish the benefit from a model like this.
Chandrika, as we come to the end of this interview, I'm going to ask you a couple of personal questions. Now, obviously, AI is the talk of the town.
Yes.
And ever since the launch of ChatGPT and large language models, everybody thinks AI is going to solve every problem,
Yeah.
right? So let me ask you a personal question. How is AI impacting your job personally?
Well, apart from the fact that people are telling me my job might be taken away.
Do you think it will?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I'm confident it won't actually. But coming back, I think we've seen AI, Suresh, evolve from just doing simple things like categorizing data or doing a simple sentiment analysis to today being able to create empathy or different kinds of content. AI has gone one step further, like we've been using it to read data patterns and recommend content that can work for this particular audience or creative messages that could potentially work for this particular audience. So while we're using it already, like generative AI is being used for things like this, I think it can go a far way, and we're just in very, what we would call nascent stages of experimenting how this is going to work. It's limitless in its possibility, and it could have a huge impact on the effectiveness and efficiency of how we do communication, the kind of insights that we might be able to derive from the content that we're putting out there, how we drive media, so on and so forth. Like I said, the possibilities are endless. But that said, as a person in the creative line, I also sometimes face a dilemma. Because I ask myself to say, at one end, creative is both an art and a science. And I think with AI, what we've taken care of is the science. We are going to overthink this data to a point that we might be able to talk to people with absolute precision. But art is different, and it comes from a different space in your brain. And I wonder if AI is going to get us to a point where we overthink that point, and if it'll steal away from the art.
The marketer's famous gut instinct, right? You have the data on one side and you have
your gut on the other side. So I'm like, will that go away?
Can AI replicate
that
gut
instinct? Can I replicate? I don't know. So I think that's a double-edged sword. But what I'm seeing so far, apart from the endless possibility, the experimentation that we've been able to do so far is only telling me it's going to get us to a better place.
On a serious note, perhaps AI is going to replace some jobs. More specifically, a person using AI might actually threaten your job and not AI in itself,
I think so. That's exactly where I did.
AI-assisted human beings might threaten your job. All right. Chandrika Jain of Lenovo, thank you for talking to us at Melt.
Thank you very much, Suresh. It was wonderful.
And with that, it's a wrap on this episode. You can follow Melt on social media. The handle is Ready2Melt, or simply log on to ready2melt.com. If you'd like to follow me, it's @Suvenk on X, formerly known as Twitter. Till next week, goodbye and thanks for watching.